Hi.
Hi, Vineeta.
Welcome to the
Thank
Sugar
you.
Office.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
So, welcome everyone to ET Retailer's exclusive curtain raiser series ahead of our flagship e-commerce and digital native summit 2023. Today, we are in conversation with our all-time favorite shark, athlete, and the founder and CEO of Sugar Cosmetics. Guest, we have with us Vineeta Singh. Hi, Vineeta. Thank you for
Hi,
joining.
Pallavi. Thank you. That was a very generous introduction.
So, Vineeta, the theme of our discussion today is rise of India's digital economy. And as a founder and an investor, what opportunity do you see India presents right now to homegrown and global brands?
Yeah, I think the last 5 years in India, accelerated by the rise of social media and affordable access to internet. I mean, India has now 800 million smartphone users who have internet access. And I think that's phenomenal. And this is leading to a growth like none other in India's consumption story. In categories, there is anywhere from 10 to 40% share that has now in the last 10 years moved to e-commerce. I don't think anybody expected that. And of course, the last 3 years of the pandemic accelerated that whole journey. I think e-commerce also is a very level playing field where it's much easier for smaller brands to get discovered. Just imagine that you can list on an Amazon and you have access to 20,000 pin codes, which wouldn't be possible 5 years ago. Similarly, on social media platforms like Instagram, you have access to 250 million Indians, and all of these are from the top, so to say, 15 to 20% of India in terms of consumption. And I think in general, the Indian economy is going to be one of the fastest growing over the next 10 years. And we're expecting the GDP from 3.5 billion to grow to about 10 billion over the next by 2030. And as that happens, and in that growth of consumption that's going to happen, that additional 6.5 billion that's going to get created, in that 55% is going to be around premiumization and people upgrading to better products. And I think that's where young brands are actually going to have a huge play, because by investing in products that are better than what have been traditionally available to Indian users, they're able to premiumize the category. They're able to upgrade the consumer to a better experience, whether it comes from something like sugar, which is makeup that is more long lasting and gives you more confidence, to you have products and categories like the ones I've invested in Shark Tank, which are natural, better for your health, products that are actually suited for specific kinds of consumers, especially Gen Z and millennials. If you look at young India, I mean, India is one of the youngest population. And if you see it is the largest population at 140 crores, but it's also the fastest growing now, which means that 65% of people are now under the age of 35. So we're also a very young country. And the kind of products that Gen Z millennials engage with are very different from the boomers. And this is again leading to brands that have an ability to connect with this younger audience. So I think 2-3 things are driving a huge opportunity for young brands. One is, of course, e-commerce that gives access to the smallest of tier 3, tier 4 towns to have access to the best products. Second is, of course, social media, making it easy to discover these, and the emergence of influencers. If when you speak to Gen Z, there are, only 1% Gen Z actually trust ads. 40% of them trust influencers and people in their social media network. So the second big factor is, of course, social media, and that leading to these brands. Third, I think, is, of course, the fact that there are niches which were earlier underserved, because to build a brand, you had to spend 100 crore on television ads. But now, because you don't have to do that, you can create a brand around very small niches, like, say, wine lovers, people who are interested in running, people who are a deeper skin tone, like, Sugar built the brand around. And now these categories, as they start small, but they're beginning to become much bigger. And that's where the opportunity of building brands is coming. So I'm very optimistic. I think India is going to be, for the next 10 years, the best place to be if you're building a brand, and especially if you're building a new age brand. I think in the pandemic, in the last 3 years, we've seen that all the young brands, and there have been more than 200 brands studied by various research reports, and all of these insurgent brands, as we call them, are growing 2 to 30 times the market. So they're growing much faster. Now they have access to capital, and I don't think anything is stopping them. So it is also forcing the legacy brands to wake up and smell the coffee and think about, oh my God, okay, now we need to create products for niches. We need to invest more in product. We need to be relevant to younger people. We need to use e-commerce, social media better. And I think that's a great place because, when brands work hard, the consumer benefits.
No, wonderful. I think the sentiment and the outlook that you share is superbly motivating for the industry, for the entrepreneurs, and you beautifully highlighted some vertical trends that are going to drive the market. When we speak of legacy brands and the new age brands, how they coexist, with Sugar, you have been taking on the biggies of the personal care, FMCG, age-old market, right? In this journey, what has been your learning of redefining this industry, but with a digital mindset?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I realized when we started Sugar back in 2015 is that digital economy is really a big democratization for younger brands, because earlier what would happen is that consumers wouldn't know which are the best products for them, because they would go into a store and smaller brands won't get the relevant shelf space in the stores. So it was impossible for consumers to discover these. Now, what happens on e-commerce is that if you have a good product, there are thousands of consumers who will start reviewing. And so when somebody goes and searches for a specific product on an e-commerce portal, the best product wins. And that suddenly gives young brands the power to create better products and thus become relevant through better products. Whereas legacy brands traditionally were of the mindset that product is a commodity. Doesn't matter. Like 20 different large brands would have the same formulation in different containers because they would assume that product is a commodity. The brand has all the power, and brand is getting built through celebrities on television ads. Now, suddenly there is a shift where product is becoming the hero. Product is becoming the center of the decision making. And that, I think, is great because it puts the power back in the hands of the consumer, because she can decide what is right for her. There might be a consumer who says, I don't want any synthetic ingredients. There might be a consumer who says that I like products that smell a certain way. And, 10 years back, they all had to settle for the same kind of products, but now they can choose their own.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I feel that on social media, there is this whole big wave happening where influencers are not only impacting decisions that consumers are making, but are also educating. And young Indians are seeking this education. A category like makeup, the engagement on Instagram and YouTube around learning about makeup and learning how to own and accept your own skin tone, figuring out how to do the various steps of makeup. This has so much engagement that by not being on television, also a young brand like Sugar can reach 40 million women every month. Now, you would have to earlier spend 10 crores in a month to be on television to do something like that. But now on Instagram, just by creating tutorials that educate women on how to accept their own skin tone, how to own their beauty, how to use various makeup products, we're able to reach the same number. And I think that is the other defining moment where brands are being forced to do more for the consumer and not just sell to them various products, but do the right thing, invest in educating her, invest in upgrading her. And I feel that is again a second part of the journey that has led to the growth of Sugar. So these are the two, and I feel that, as a brand, we're going to continue investing in great quality products that work for younger women and educating the consumer, because we feel that in 2023 authenticity matters. Having a genuine story why you built a brand, sharing that story, educating the consumer, taking them along the journey rather than treating them as a fool and trying to sell something to them which they may not believe in. I think that's the future of brand building. And brands in the next 10 years will be built around trust, consistency, and authentic storytelling. And I feel that that's how sugar has been able to really stay relevant and compete with some of these biggies.
Wonderful. I think you're bang on in your outlook and your approach of looking at this market. So, Vineeta, you beautifully highlighted the growth opportunity for new age brands. But at this moment, it becomes important to understand for these startups to become the brands of tomorrow. I believe there has to be a shift in momentum and
Yeah.
strategy
Yeah.
towards sustainability and profitability.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's no one answer for this. But where do brands need to invest in their operations
Yeah.
to get those economies of scale?
Yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think all of these brands need to create sustainable long-term businesses, both from a shareholder value perspective and also from like stability, right? I mean, there is so much, there are so many layoffs happening in startups, etc. But you don't want there is a brand reputation hit when that happens. So, but if you look at like the data, for most insurgent brands, the average time, even for successful brand, that it takes to get to about that 75 to 100 crore range is typically 6 to 7 years. Now, at that time, when you're really trying to figure out product market fit, you're building distribution, you're trying to build your positioning, etc., it's difficult. So I feel that when you look at a brand's journey, I think it's important to look at it in phases. There's the 0 to 100 crore sort of journey where the brand is just trying to figure out where is my right to win. Like, there are so many brands, there is a growing market. What will be the space that I will operate at where I have a right to win? And in that phase, it is hard to just focus on breaking even, because if you stay focused on breaking even, you will not probably, in a lot of cases, be able to really crack that right to win the product market fit. So I feel that a lot of time as investors, and I wear both hats as an entrepreneur and an investor. As an investor, one has to be patient in that journey of the 0 to 100 crore phase. And sometimes that does take up to 5 to 6 years. In fact, on average, even for good brands, it takes that long. But then once you cross that 75 to 100 crore mark, and you've been in the system for about 5 to 6 years, then of course it's important to start thinking about building a sustainable business. And now there are 3-4 levers here. One, of course, is the fundamental product gross margin. What do you make it for? What do you sell it for? And there I feel it's hard to get a lot of efficiency. So which is why early on also, brands should be focused on ensuring that the gross margins are high. And if you see in Shark Tank, a lot of questions that we have are around gross margins. The second is what you're investing in marketing. Now that I feel in the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years would be significantly higher as a proportion, because a challenger brand has to invest at least 20 to 40% of their net revenue in marketing to grow. Because otherwise, if nobody has heard about you or tried you, you don't even know whether you have potential to get repeats. So for repeats to happen, you have to first acquire customers. So I think that that part of it is where I would give benefit of doubt, saying that don't go to a brand in their third year saying that marketing should be 8%, which is a legacy brand marketing percentage, because if they put 8%, then they're never going to grow because the base is small. Similarly, I think team costs, where there should be a road to a sub 10% employee manpower kind of cost, but early stages, because of the fact that you're hiring people but your revenue is lesser, it'll be higher as a percentage. So I think there are 2-3 levers that brands have, and I feel that it is important once you reach a certain scale, after 100 crore is what I think, where you start really thinking about profitability and other metrics, working capital and so on. Till that phase, even when a large FMCG company will start a new brand, till that 100 crore mark, they don't even expect those to really be profitable. So I feel that that investing in the early stages in putting the right structures in place, figuring out manufacturing. All of that is important. And I feel that, if you don't do that investment, then sometimes it becomes like very early on a trading business where you're not able to invest in brand, but you're just investing in discounts, etc., to grow your number. And then over the long term, you start paying for it. Like, for instance, most efficient thing for any brand is performance marketing. But if you don't invest in brand marketing, which is beyond performance marketing, which is, really creating memory structures in the consumer's head, then in the long term, you'll always have to keep investing in performance marketing. So some of these are strategic. Investment in tech, for instance. Early on, you have to do because that data is helping you create better products. Those products will be your winners. If you don't invest in the first 5 years in tech, then you cannot get the consumer insight right. And then you'll pay for it in the long term. So I think it's important to balance short term, long term. And this whole conversation around profitability sometimes becomes unfair and that conversation can only be honestly had between the board and the founders. And I feel that generally the board knows that this is our road to profitability. So even if there's no profitability right now, this is what my road to profitability. So as an investor, I wouldn't invest in a business which is very low gross margin, or where there's a fundamental dependence on performance marketing, which will never go away. Because in those cases, I don't see a road to profitability. But in all other cases, I would invest in a loss-making company as well, because I know that this is their plan to eventually become profitable and their fundamentals are correct.
Wonderful. I think this was a super honest answer. And for any entrepreneur out there, this is going to be the biggest takeaway from this interview.
Thank you.
You highlighted the role of building the right team. And you have been a very strong advocate of women entrepreneurs, women workforce. In India's road to become a 5 trillion GDP, how do you see we can tap this potential of the women workforce? Right? What needs to be done there?
I think in India's ambition of becoming $5 trillion in the next 3-4 years, there is a McKinsey study that says that one of the biggest factors is going to be participation of women in workforce. To the extent that almost $800 billion out of this 5 trillion can actually come from a 10% increase in women's participation in workforce, which is right now one of the lowest in the world. We are ranked even below neighboring countries like Bangladesh. And I feel that this is a crisis because, we've raised an entire generation of women who are trying to be independent, working, but the responsibilities that they have at home haven't yet come down. So they are heavy lifting at home and at workplace, which is leading to a lot of them giving up on this workforce participation. And the only way to reverse this trend, I feel, is with more support at home. I think companies are taking a lot of initiatives in letting women have more flexibility and being supportive of young mothers. But many times what happens is that they lack support at home, because of which they don't have any option but to opt out of the workforce. So I feel that one big shift is going to happen is going to be conversations around getting families and social structures to be more supportive of working women. Second, I feel that, of course, role models matter. And that's where, people like you, media houses come in, and I feel there's a huge difference in the conversation that were there 5 years back versus now around women in workforce, women leaders, women entrepreneurs getting celebrated. And that's leading to more role models, which when people like me were growing up were missing. And I feel that is going to change the next generation, who will end up being more ambitious and will demand participation in workforce. The third is, of course, I always say that, women end up always, and if you look at data, women-led businesses end up hiring more women because there is, internal role models, and there are generally policies that are more pro-women. And thus I feel that just any initiative taken by the investment fraternity or by the government in investing more in women entrepreneurs will have a cascading impact on the participation of women in workforce, because these women will employ more women who will then start their own businesses, employ more women, and that kind of a network effect is phenomenal. So I feel that these are the three things that need to happen for us to get that additional 10% participation workforce. Right now, given the fact that over the last 2-3 years, the participation has gone down, it is seeming like a very uphill task. So, which is why it is urgent that we start looking at this and figuring out how way to reverse this.
Wonderful. I mean, your thoughts are very motivating, and I personally envision a world where 10 years down the line, we would not be asking this question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's possible, but we have to include the men also in that conversation, gender conversation, and we can have a huge impact on the economy and overall ecosystem if that happens.
Great. So, before we wrap this up, Vineeta, just one last question. Down the line, what is that one quality in the entrepreneurs of today that you believe will lead to the growth of business leaders of tomorrow?
I think the single most important quality, which I think has 90% of the impact on whether a business actually ends up becoming successful and then sustainable, is perseverance. Building a brand, building a business, building a company, building an organization, these are all multi-decade long activities. And I think they require a certain level of patience and perseverance to stay the course, showing up for your consumer day after day, every single day over decades is what leads to building a sustainable business. And I feel that that's the most important quality that differentiates the best founders is their perseverance.
I think that's a beautiful end to our conversation here. And thank you again, Vineeta, for your time. It was lovely catching up with you.
Thank you, Pallavi. This was fun.